Hello there, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of CookieCast. Today on CookieCast, it's the Laces Out podcast, and we're talking NFL footballs, not surprisingly. Straight away, you'll notice no special guest this week. It is explained. It's kind of okay. We'll let you decide. But we're still bringing the great NFL content. We've got news. We've got game reviews. We've got game previews, predictions, stats, everything that you've come to expect from the Laces Out podcast. Before we get started, please do consider like, share, subscribe, and comment. Drop reviews. And if you've got an NFL fan in your life, send them this podcast. They'll thank you for it. Right, let's get going. So here we go. This is CookieCast. Laces Out.
Recording in progress.
Well. Here we go. It's week 4 going into week 5. It's NFL podcast, Laces Out. I am here, and the co-host with the co-most is also here, Mr. Paul Williams. How are you, sir?
I'm very well, Mr. Cook.
Fantastic.
How are you?
Oh, I mean, I could complain, but I won't because we haven't got the time. Any of you watchers out there, you will notice a missing element. The NFL podcast is absolutely the place to get those special guests. And this week's special guest declined our offer due to, in his own words, pain of death, which I think is acceptable.
See, I didn't know whether you were going to go with our special guest this week is so special that they can't join us or something like that.
They're too special.
So their special power is invisibility, if you will.
Yes, our guest had to decline, unfortunately. But we said, hey, we have the tools, we have the mechanisms in place that is not an issue for us. We can move on. We can call on other guest predictors to help us out. But before we get to that, we don't need to go down that route. It does mean there's it's going to be a little bit lacking. No season-long picks and stuff. I'll hand over to Paul to drive the bus down the road of NFL football. Paul, what have we got this week?
So, like Andy said there, unfortunately, no season-long predictions from our guest, as they sadly don't exist. But we do have game week 4 predictions to go through from last week. So, obviously, it was a full slate of 16 games. Again, we had the joy of the first UK or overseas game from this week, which was the Vikings taking on the Saints at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. So, 16 games to pick from, in reverse order, with 7 out of 16 picks correct. It was last week's guest, Mr. Stuart Woodmansey. So well done, Stuart, getting 7 out of the 16 games correct. Now, if you recall from last week's predictions and last week's podcast, myself and Andy had managed to somehow transpire to basically pick the exact same picks, with the exception of the very first game of the week, which was the Cincinnati Bengals at home to the Miami Dolphins. One of us picked one way, one of us picked the other. Surprisingly enough, neither of us picked a tie. So basically that game determined who would win the week as a whole. So, with 10 out of 16 picks correct, taking second place, it is the man the podcast is named for. It is Mr. Andrew Cook, ladies and gentlemen, letting himself down by picking the Dolphins to beat the Bengals. I, however, was on the Bengals, so therefore getting 11 out of the 16 games correct and taking the win for this week, it is myself. So, from an overall scores for the season perspective, we have myself on 2.5 points, whereas Andy and the guest each have 1 point. I know what you're thinking, but Mr. Williams, how can there be 4 game weeks played and 4.5 points total? We covered this in last week's game. In week 3's predictions. In that there was a tie in week 3. Yes, in week 3. So it was last week. I do apologise. It was in last week's prediction. Myself, Andy, and Rob all got 7 out of 16 games correct. So rather than giving thirds of points, it just made it a lot easier if I just gave everyone a half point. So that indicates why there's a spare half point swimming around in the predictions. So that's the predictions, but we also do a side prediction that's just between me and Andy each week. So we each pick 4 teams that we think are nailed on to get a victory. We each get 4 picks. Once that game is picked, the other person can't pick the opposite team. It's not how it works. So, Andy's teams from last week, he did have the Dolphins as one of his 4. That's an incorrect pick, I'm afraid. He did, however, bring it round with the Cowboys at home to the Washington Commanders.
Oh yeah, I'm going to be bringing up the Cowboys.
The Los Angeles Chargers at the Houston Texans, and the Green Bay Packers at home to the New England Patriots, giving Andy 3 out of 4 points, moving him on to 7 out of a possible 16 for the season so far. Very well done, Mr. Cook.
Thank you.
I sadly picked the Lions to continue their hot streak against the Seahawks. I was incorrect with this, therefore take a loss on that one. However, I did have the Eagles at home to the Jags. They took care of business. The Giants at home to the Bears. They also took care of business. And the Raiders getting off the schneid against the Broncos at home, giving me also 3 points and taking me on to 11 for the season so far. So there you have it. After 4 weeks of the side bet, Andy has 7 out of a possible 16. I have 11 out of a possible 16. And then we'll also get onto our week 5 side bet picks. Before we do that, why don't we have a little bit of stats about week 4's games?
There are stats. Obviously, at this point in time, it's probably worth mentioning that the first stat is a bit of a meaty one. It's quite long. It also talks about some possibly difficult subjects. I think mention of said Dolphins game is maybe an issue for some. We here at CookieCast support correct concussion protocols. The stats this week are brought to you by the Stats Mistress. She's still bringing it home for us. And they are brought to her by Nate Davis of USA Today. These are the NFL Week 4 stats for the 2022 NFL season. Number 1. The league's concussion protocol is issue number 1, hanging over this season. Following Dolphins quarterback Tua Tagovailoa's 2 blows to the head within a 5-day stretch, spanning week 3 and 4, and his ultimate hospitalization, the NFL Players Association initiated an investigation into Tagovailoa's treatment. The case remains open, but the union has already fired the unaffiliated neurotrauma consultant who helped treat the quarterback September 25th. On Saturday, the league and union released a joint statement which read, in part, and this is in quotations, the NFL and NFLPA agree that the modifications to the concussions protocol are needed to enhance player safety. We anticipate changes to the protocol being made in the coming days based on what has been learned thus far in the review process. Now, normally I'd just jump straight onto stat number 2 for the week, but I don't think that's really going to be a thing at this point in time. I saw a tweet. Last week we talked about tweets. Last week we talked about tweets that age like milk. I saw a tweet that was, at the point in time I saw it, 12 hours old. And in a lot of ways this had also aged like milk, because it said, if Tua Tagovailoa steps on the field today, now this was obviously after, so I was reading this after the events. It was talking about how things like, criminal negligence of all staff and anybody involved in that team, how the multiple people that would end up getting sued, it was the worst possible thing that could happen, and it just went on and on and on. For a tweet, it was quite hefty in the words, and obviously reading it, I fully agreed with it, having seen what happened. I know from what we saw coming out after, and for anybody that doesn't know, it's probably worth mentioning, like it says there, Tua Tagovailoa took a hit in week 3, and it was a bad one, and he was struggling to stand, he was struggling to walk, he needed holding up, and the Miami Dolphins announced that this was a back injury that was clearly a head injury. I talked about this and I said, basically, it's very simple there. They have built an offense around a particular player, and the Dolphins were doing well, and obviously they weren't have wanted to lose that player from that dynamic. So they've bent, not necessarily the rules, but they've bent protocol, which I don't think anybody was going to agree with. Coming into week 4, another hit, and it was horrible to watch. The way, like, his hands were twisted, the hit itself, every part of that should never have happened. Now, I'm not saying it was a bad hit. I'm saying it was, it was the tackle was a tackle. It's not that we're talking about. It's the fact that it had the opportunity to happen, and what has come off the back of that. Now, again, the Dolphins as a team have been very much on the, he's moving all his extremities and he's fine, fine in the hospital and stuff. And it's like, again, sounds very much like being played down from that side of things. And then immediately they fire the unaffiliated trauma specialist, who is just the sacrificial lamb, because that means that everything's going to go away. And it's like, this is textbook how not to do stuff.
Yeah, pretty much. I did see that, to absolutely no one's surprise, he's officially been ruled out of week 5. No shit.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's one of those ones where in fact, I remember. I don't think it was last season. I think it was a couple of seasons ago. Do you remember when Patrick Mahomes took a hit in the playoff game against the Cleveland Browns?
Yeah. And
I think he had to finish the game. Well, they had to bring in Chad Henne, I think, to finish the game. And everyone was saying, "Oh, well, AFC title games next week. Is he going to clear the concussion protocol and stuff like that?" And obviously, he did. He played. There were no issues, but it's that sort of situation where if he'd have been in the Tua position, where he'd have taken a hit and just gone down like Tua did,
yeah,
the Chiefs would have been in all sorts of problems,
yeah,
and they wouldn't have had a leg to stand on and stuff like that. So it does just go to show that it's not so much hit and miss, because obviously, had Tua not taken that hit, there's all sorts of possibilities that he would have been absolutely fine. But it's the fact that, well, he did take the hit.
You can't take that chance. And the fact that they did take that chance, I imagine it speaks volumes in a lot of ways. It's just a really bad look for everybody.
It's not great, is it?
When you put in people's lives, people's careers, just the simple, taking 2 bad hits in 2 weeks. When you put in that in front of everything else, there's a distinct problem there. I'd seen all sorts of stuff saying concussion protocol's taken a massive step back because of this, and all sorts of stuff like that. It's like, yeah, the whole thing needs addressing. The concussion protocol was put in place for a very clear reason, and if that reason isn't being hit, then something's gone wrong. It's not there to stop teams winning, which is maybe how it's perceived by some teams. It's there for a very clear reason. When that is not followed, then you've got problems. Moving on, obviously we wish all the best and speedy recovery, if that is a thing, for Tua, and hopefully the Dolphins can also keep moving forward, because they were doing well. So, second stat of the week: the current system failed once again Sunday night when Tampa Bay Buccaneers tight end Cameron Brate re-entered the game after suffering a blow to the head that eventually landed him in the protocol. Starting to sound a little bit like a broken record, this.
That one was strange, because you could see that he was clearly a bit sort of woozy, like his eyes were a bit like sort of not there. And it was strange that he came off, obviously went through the protocol, passed the protocol, and then at half time they must have evaluated him again, and he was just gone. But then later in the game, he was back out on the side, and he looked absolutely fine. So I don't really know what's happened there, because I don't know if it was they just didn't have enough time to evaluate him, or he just managed to sort of skip by the medical person. I don't know, but yeah, something's definitely not right in that one.
I'd listened, like in that game, the commentary was saying about how players are putting the team winning before their health and getting back out on the field when everybody involved know they shouldn't be. That's not a good look for anyone. So it's scary stuff. It's really scary stuff. Stat number 3 is the New York Jets quarterback Zach Wilson made his debut, having missed the first 3 weeks following surgery from a pre-season knee injury. He threw a pair of picks against the Pittsburgh Steelers, but also passed for 252 yards and a touchdown in a 24-20 upset. He became the first Jets quarterback to ever catch a touchdown pass and celebrated accordingly. As for the Steelers, who have lost 3 in a row without OLB TJ Watt, rookie quarterback Kenny Pickett made his regular season debut. The 2022 first rounder became the first quarterback in league history to rush for multiple touchdowns in his inaugural game. He also threw a trio of ints, one a Hail Mary attempt to the contest final play, and the other 2 maybe not his fault either.
His first passing attempt was an interception.
Yeah.
Which, to be fair, puts him in esteemed company as Peyton Manning's first passing attempt in the NFL was an interception. So,
I know a couple of people who are going to enjoy this stat. Paul? Time to trade Dak Prescott? ? Backup Cooper Rush became the first Dallas Cowboys quarterback to win his first 4 starts after overseeing a 25-10 win against the Washington Commanders. Rush passed for 223 yards and a pair of touchdowns, while the Dallas defense largely snuffed the Commanders' offense. I know I mentioned it earlier, and I do want to discuss Cowboys football. I am well and truly behind the first part of that stat. I have zero time for Dak Prescott. I think he is a terrible quarterback. And I also believe that the Cowboys are consistently worse off for having him in that position. I honestly think that this is a great point to just say, let's not have you back, shall we? Let's just stick with what we've got. The Cowboys are winning.
It's a strange one, because obviously Dak got the job when Tony Romo was injured. So, is there a possibility that Dak could have that done to himself? Obviously, Cooper Rush is doing well. They're winning games with him as the starter. It would make absolutely no sense to switch him out at the minute. So,
but you know that when Dak Prescott gets cleared to return, that's exactly what they're going to do. Because that's what they always do. They always go, this quarterback is winning games for us, but that's our franchise quarterback, so let's get him back in the game so we can go back to losing. What I would prefer to see is when somebody in that position returns, whether they say, look, this guy's been winning, you're not able to say that for us, so let's play for the game. Let's play for that role. You go in for now, and if you don't put us ahead by this point in time, then he's going in. The 6th, and for me, final stat for the week looks a little bit like this. Joining the Cowboys at 3-1 in the NFC East is the New York Giants. The last time they began 3-1 was 2011, which also happens to be the last time they won the Super Bowl. Interesting. Paul, I know for a fact I sent you some meaty stats. What have you got for us?
He did indeed, Mr. Cook. So, Sunday's game in London's Tottenham Hotspur Stadium between the Minnesota Vikings and the New Orleans Saints was the NFL's 100th to be played outside of the American borders. For the first time in an NFL International Series game, God Save the King was sung prior to kickoff. More Patrick Mahomes magic as the Kansas City Chiefs thumped Tom Brady and the Buccaneers 41-31 on Sunday night. The score much closer than the game ever was. On Sunday, Green Bay quarterback Aaron Rodgers threw his 500th career touchdown pass, including the playoffs, the 5th man in NFL history to reach that plateau. Only Brady, 716, Drew Brees, 608, Peyton Manning, 579, and Brett Favre, 552 are the others in that group.
It's one of those things, what the listener / watcher won't know is that we are a little pressed for time at this point. I can see a countdown ticking away. But this was one of the games that I did want to kind of touch on. A classic example of when the Chiefs are absolutely on point what they can achieve as a team. They were on fire in that game. Unfortunately, on the other side of the ball, on the other side of the field, whichever way you want to put it, I also feel that game highlighted the glaring holes in that Buccaneers team. I said that last week. I was like, we were talking about, is everybody still comfortable with their Super Bowl pick? And I was like, I'd like my pick back, because I don't know what's wrong with that team, but there's something wrong with that team. And it's just week in, week out, it's just the holes are just getting bigger and bigger. It's kind of scary to watch, but maybe this is the end.
It's not great,
for
and
Tommy
again,
Terrific.
it's another thing that just throws weight behind my. I don't think Brady will finish the season pick, but that's just me. Something else that didn't get picked up in the stats on that one was that Mahomes was the fastest quarterback to 20,000 passing yards.
Yeah.
I think it said that he'd done it in 68 games, maybe. And I think he got there quicker than Stafford, who was the quickest before him, and I think he did it in 79. I think.
Yeah.
But continuing on, the Titans, who won the AFC South the past 2 seasons, improved to 2-2 to declare a share of the division lead following the Jacksonville Jaguars' loss at Philadelphia. Jacksonville was marred by 5 turnovers from quarterback Trevor Lawrence, and Lawrence became the first player in the 21st century to lose 4 fumbles in a single game. It was raining. The ball was potentially a little bit slippery, but...
And they kept talking about that in the commentary. They kept mentioning the weather conditions and stuff, but yeah, it looked dicey, whichever way you want to slice it, whether or not.
You're not great. The Seattle Seahawks and Geno Smith prevailed 48-45 against the Lions on Sunday. The teams combined for 12 touchdowns and 1,075 yards of offense. That game sounded ridiculous.
Yeah, it was bonkers. It's another kind of combo that I'm starting to enjoy. This Geno Smith Seahawks combination, I kind of like it. And I felt, to start off with, I felt a bit wrong saying that, having been behind Wilson for so long. But if it's working, it's working. You can't deny it. So I was a bit like, yeah, I kind of getting on board with this.
It's true. If it's getting them results, then stick with it.
Absolutely.
Just 2 more to go from me. So Chargers running back Austin Eckler tied for the league lead with 20 touchdowns scored in 2021, but began Sunday with a donut in the scoring column. By the end of the game, however, he had reached the end zone 3 times as the battered Bolts notched a badly needed 34-24 win against the Houston Texans. And finally, the Texans 3-1 are now the league's only winless team.
Indeed.
After the Raiders got themselves a win against the Broncos, whilst the Eagles improved to 4-0, largely thanks to running back Miles Sanders, who proved to be an all-weather back by scoring twice and rushing for a career-best 134 yards at the waterlogged Lincoln Financial Field.
What you're saying there, Paul, is it'd be a really, really, really bad idea to leave Sanders on your bench this weekend? Hands up if you...
Do the best. It's alright though, I played the Lions defence and scored me -8.
I was very worried that my defence was not the defence for me, having decided after long and hard that it was going to be the San Francisco 49ers for me this week. 22 points later, I beat the number 1 in our league. Don't know what to tell you on that one. What I can tell you is we've got next week to discuss. We kind of put a bow on week 4 and threw it in the river. We do have next week to discuss, which will involve talking about picks, side action, and everything in between. But we'll have to do that after a very short break. We will be back.
Recording in progress.
That's it, a short commercial break and we're back. Where are we now? What's next on the agenda?
So, like you like to say, week 4, done, dusted, neatly folded, placed into the box. We do move on to week 5, and all that's left to do is go through our week 5 predictions and picks. So week 5 opens up with the Thursday night football, where the Indianapolis Colts travel to Denver to take on the Broncos in what I believe is known officially as the Peyton Manning Derby. I saw something where someone had put on on the Twitter that Prime was taking the piss out of the Falcons because they'd picked Jonathan Taylor, number 28 for the for the Colts, and Russell Wilson, number 3 for the Denver Broncos. It took me a while to get there in the end, but I did realise what they were getting at, and it was quite funny. But no, I believe they are just the 2 premier players on either team. So Falcons fans, don't take any offence to it, just because your team absolutely shat the bed in the Super Bowl. But we don't need to go on about it. So yes, we have the Indianapolis Colts taking on the Denver Broncos. Now, as you can see from those watching on YouTube, there is no guest this week. However, we've called in a few favours, we've pulled a few strings, and we've managed to get the picks for this week's guest done by everyone's favourite faceless podcast contributor. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Amy Britton's picks are back in the world. She's returned from week 1. I don't think I ever told her that she actually tied that week, so she got more. Oh no, I think I did tell her that she got more right than me. So she should just basically take my place. To be honest, I'll get her on towards the end of the season. I'll get her on in my place, and
I keep saying
doing the podcast.
I keep saying we need a podcast where all of us are replaced by our significant others. I've suggested it to the Formula One guys because they love talking about their good ladies. Right. I keep saying we need to do a podcast where we're replaced by our significant others, but then it's never mentioned. Just completely gloss over it.
We've also got the issue that it's never going to happen.
Well, I was going to say, do you think she's ever going to strap on the podcast pants and get involved? Super Bowl preview. Let's lock it in now.
Maybe if she's had the prerequisite right number of glasses of wine, maybe she might be tempted. But until that point, it's probably unlikely to happen. We digress. We'll dive back into the Week 5 picks. So as we said, Colts Broncos is the first game of the week. Couple of homer picks in this one. We've got yourself and Amy going for the Broncos, whereas I've picked the Colts to get the win in this one. Let's be honest, it's 2 poor teams playing against each other. It's probably going to be a terrible, terrible game.
Yeah.
Not one for the purists. Whoever comes out on top will just be slightly better off. But don't see either of these teams making the postseason personally. Both pretty poor. Russell Wilson's trade to Denver hasn't exactly gone to plan. And he just looks a bit lost to me. He does look as if he's getting a little bit better. But
do you think the Denver Broncos is where Russell Wilson will retire?
I don't know to be honest, because he's 33, 34, something like that. He's in his mid-30s, let's say. So, depending on whether he's going to try and do a Brady and play till his mid-40s, I can't see him being in Denver for the next 5 to 6 years. I think it could be a 2 years, see how he's done, and then they might try and shop him around. If it's been a complete and total bust, then I can see changes being made. The Broncos aren't exactly ones to hang around. I think since Peyton retired, they've had at least 4 or 5 different starting quarterbacks. You've had Simeon for a while. Case Keenum had a go. Flacco had a go. Bridgewater had a go. Drew Lock's had a go. So no one's ever been able to really hammer that down. So
at time of recording, Russell Wilson is 33 years old.
So there you go. So he's arguably got at least another guaranteed 4 or 5 years if he can stay healthy. But it's just whether he wants to continue on. Obviously, he's got outside interests with his wife and things like that. So that might dictate certain things. He might want to spend more time with his family. You never know. But I think it'll be a case of how the next season and a half goes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Will determine whether he stays around or not.
Yeah.
We move on to the second of the international games played this season, and it is the first trip over the pond for the Green Bay Packers, who are the designated home team and will take on the New York Giants. 2 picks for the Packers in this one, myself and Andy, whereas Amy thinks the Giants might spring a bit of a surprise here. Honestly, given how the season's gone so far, wouldn't class it as that much of a shock if the Giants actually managed to get that result there. I am picking the Packers though. But next up, we move back to the 6 o'clock slot of games over here in the UK, where we had the Los Angeles Chargers taking on the Cleveland Browns. Again, myself and Andy have both gone for the Chargers, whereas Amy has picked the Browns. Next up, we've got the Steelers taking on the Buffalo Bills. Myself and Andy on the Bills. Amy's taken the Steelers. She's all about the underdogs this week, clearly. We have the Houston Texans travelling to Jacksonville to take on the Jags. Clean sweep of predictions for the Jags here. Feeling that Trevor Lawrence is going to bounce back with a nice comprehensive win against the league's only winless team. Next up, we've got the Chicago Bears travelling to Minnesota to take on the Vikings. Myself and Andy both like the Vikings, whereas Amy has taken the Bears in this one.
Really?
I can see the logic in that one. Obviously, Minnesota have had to come back from the UK, no bye week, so there's a potential that some of the players could be a bit jet lagged. So,
did you see anything about Justin Fields? Saw something earlier or late last week, early this week, saying that Justin Fields has expressed a dislike for the current way the Bears are and is potentially requesting trade. Can't confirm the source. It is something that I saw in the last week, though.
Oh dear. Well, watch this space, as that could become quite the story. Next up, we have the Detroit Lions travelling to New England to take on the Patriots. And we've got another clean sweep here, ladies and gentlemen. We've all gone for the Lions to bounce back after their 48-point sham against the Seahawks last week. Next up, we've got the Seahawks travelling to New Orleans to take on the Saints. Myself and Andy both picked the Saints on this one. Obviously no jet lag there. Whereas Amy has picked the Seahawks to continue their little good spell of form. We've got the Miami Dolphins travelling to New York to take on the Jets. Clean sweep for the Dolphins on this one. Obviously, with or without Tua, probably should just about have enough to take care of the Jets. We've got the Atlanta Falcons taking on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Again, myself and Andy, this is the Buccaneers' third game at home in a row, and they are yet to win at home, having lost the last 2 against the Packers and the Chiefs. Me and Andy both think they'll bounce back, though, with a nice comprehensive win against the Atlanta Falcons, whereas Amy has picked the Falcons to get the road win. We have the Tennessee Titans travelling to Washington to take on the Commanders. Clean sweep for the Titans on this one. The San Francisco 49ers away at the Carolina Panthers. Andy and Amy firmly in the camp of the 49ers on this one. However, I've picked the Panthers mainly because, for some reason, the San Francisco 49ers do well against teams that you'd think they'd struggle against, but seem to struggle against teams that you think they would put away nice and easily. So I think the Panthers will spring the shock here, and the 49ers will just be, as they usually are, shit against average teams. Next up, we have the unbeaten Philadelphia Eagles taking on the Arizona Cardinals. Myself and Andy think they will remain undefeated, whereas Amy's taking the Cardinals to hang the first loss on the Eagles this season. Could happen. They're probably going to lose at some point. Why not this week? Last 3 games, we have the Dallas Cowboys travelling to LA to take on the Rams. Amy's taken the Cowboys and Cooper Rush to get yet another win, whereas myself and Andy think the Rams will hang a loss on the Cowboys. The Sunday Night Football sees the Cincinnati Bengals travel to Baltimore to take on the Ravens, and we've all picked the Ravens to get the win in that one. And the Monday Night Football should be a bit tasty. In a conference game between the Vegas Raiders and the Kansas City Chiefs, and we have all gone for the Kansas City Chiefs to get the win. That's our Week 5 game picks for all 16 games. All that's left to do, Mr. Cook, is to pick our side bets. And obviously, as we both got 3 wins out of 4 last week, it is back to you to pick first again overall, my friend.
I was trying to be on the bobby, and I'm nearly there on the screen I need to be on with my dinosaur technology. Any second now. Here we go. So, last week I tried a bit of I need to readjust things. So if I pick teams that are normally losing to win, then the world will right itself and they will start losing. Okay. See how you like this one. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers to beat the Atlanta Falcons.
I like it. I'd love to see the stats and see if Brady has ever lost 3 home games on the spin. I would imagine probably not. As I mean, there'll be seasons where he didn't even lose 3 games at all. So,
yeah,
I'd imagine it's unlikely that he's ever gone 3 home games losing in consecutive weeks. But we'll see. I like it as a first pick, though. Falcons, not really that strong. It's the kind of game the Buccaneers need just to get themselves back on.
Yeah, they need to right the ship at this point.
That's some lovely wordplay. That's excellent. That's what the viewers and the listeners keep coming back for, isn't it? I mean, let's be honest.
Stu would have high-fived the shit out of that.
Oh yeah, big time. Right, my first 2 picks. I will go for the Jacksonville Jaguars to take care of business against the Houston Texans at home.
Does it not feel weird picking the Jaguars to win a game?
It does.
Yeah.
But I've liked what I've seen so far. They started off for the game against the Eagles really strong, and then obviously they just ran out of steam. Trevor Lawrence just started throwing picks all over the place. Started deciding he want to hold on to the ball and all that sort of jazz. My second pick. I'm going to go for the Buffalo Bills to take care of business against the Steelers at home.
I looked at that game as kind of a banker, but I've not been keen. Like, everybody was hard on for the Bills at the start of the season, and it looks a little bit like they've maybe taken a step off the gas, maybe, and maybe it is just one of those where it was a bad week and they needed to just get back to it. But anyway, you've made that as a pick. I will jump straight in with the Kansas City Chiefs to dominate against the Las Vegas Raiders.
And your third pick, sir?
There's some difficult games to predict here. You've got that one. Okay. I'm going to stick with a prediction that I've made in the week predictions, and I'm going to go with the Green Bay Packers getting it done in the UK against the New York Giants.
I like it. I like it very much. The only thing that makes me wonder about the Packers is the fact that they've never been over before.
I do wonder how they're going to deal with the travel, because I know a lot of teams have struggled. There is also that whole when the teams step foot the soil of another country, sometimes, things go awry. But I'm still thinking the Packers will be able to get it done.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. So, my last two picks of the side bet. I'm going to go for the Titans at the Commanders.
Yeah, good pick.
I'm not feeling super confident about that one, but some of the other games are a little bit closer than I'd like.
Yeah.
And my last one. There's a lot of division games.
Yeah.
A lot of division games this week. I'll go for the Vikings. They're at home. I like the Vikings at home.
So, I will say this here and now. You have taken my last pick. Obviously, that's the way this game works. I was kind of locked in on that. But, in the process of looking for a possible other pick, it's a dodgy pick to make, I know, but Philadelphia Eagles to beat the Arizona Cardinals. I'm looking at the 4-0 versus the 2-2 in that situation. As you mentioned before, the Eagles are going to have to take a loss at some point. I can't see them keeping this up. But I don't think I see it being this game necessarily. I think they need to come up against probably a stronger team to take a comfortable loss.
Yeah, the Cardinals are one of those weird teams for me. They're in a very similar sort of vein to the 49ers for me. The Cardinals will struggle to beat a team like the Jets. So they'll labour to like a 3-point win or something like that. And then they'll go and play against the Chiefs and they'll absolutely twat them.
Yeah.
Or something like that. They're a very strange team to watch.
I drafted Kyler Murray as my QB1.
Yeah,
because
no problems with that.
In previous seasons, he was one of those quarterbacks that no matter what the team did, he still got ridiculous number of points. However, this season, that has not been the case. A distinct drop-off in numbers. I don't know if that's team-wise or him, or maybe the answer is in, if you reverse engineer it, is it him that's causing the problems in the team? At the end of the day, the quarterback leads the charge, and if there's any kind of drop off,
it's always funny, isn't it? Because obviously, loads of stuff came out in the off season where he'd had a clause put into his contract that he had to do independent study and all that sort of stuff. Then that was quoted as being incorrect information, or it was removed, or
fake news,
something like that. And then everyone's saying all these sort of cracking good jokes that every weekend that there's a Call of Duty online game or something like that, he's 3-36 or something like that. So, because obviously he spent all Friday and Saturday night up playing video games and stuff like that. But
I mean, I always have that thing of what do sports personalities that get paid ridiculous amounts of money actually do with their time? There's only so many times you can go out for a nice meal, and but I imagine that's not the case, But I know a lot of NFL players, a lot of sports personalities love the computer games, love that world. Obviously, when a new Madden gets released, there's often like tournaments between players. I'd seen something about how you were able to like sign up to play against NFL players for like online tournaments and stuff like that's kind of cool. But yeah, there's what do you do with all your time and all your money, I suppose?
It is a thing. It is a legitimate thing. Don't get us wrong. So, just to clarify, side bet week 5 teams are as follows. Andy has the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at home to the Atlanta Falcons, the Kansas City Chiefs at home to the Las Vegas Raiders, the Packers at home to the New York Giants. It's in London, and the Philadelphia Eagles on the road in Arizona against the Cardinals. I have taken the Jacksonville Jaguars at home to the Houston Texans, the Buffalo Bills at home to the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Tennessee Titans on the road against the Washington Commanders, and the Minnesota Vikings at home to the Chicago Bears. 4 delicious picks made by 2 delicious people in 1 delicious competition. That, ladies and gentlemen, concludes your Week 4 roundup, your Week 5 preview. Mr. Cook, do you have anything further to add to this particular party, recipe, meal, whatever you want to class it?
There's not a huge amount from me. It's just a big shout out to the listener / watcher. If you love the NFL like we love the NFL, and you think, do you know something? These guys, I could take them down like that. Get involved. Send in your predictions. Get in on the side bet. Take our remaining games and try and make something out of them. Send it in to us. And if you beat us, then you can come on and gloat. If you even if you don't beat us, why don't you come on and gloat anyway? We are absolutely open to offers of guests, cash money, mostly cash money,
NFL memorabilia, paraphernalia.
Absolutely. And if you manage to beat us, we can hook you up with NFL memorabilia.
Mad props.
Yeah, that's it as well. Yeah. Other than that, I don't particularly have anything else. I did like I was saying to you off air, I'd wanted to really get into the football side of the football podcast. But other than that, nothing from me. Anything from you?
No, sir. Just for everyone to enjoy the upcoming weekend's festivities. If you're based in the UK and you head into the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium for the Giants-Packers game, enjoy.
That was one thing. That was one thing I was going to mention earlier. The absolute delight of putting the TV on in the middle of the Sunday day, going, just going to watch a little NFL action. Delicious. And then being told I had to put a Disney movie on.
Oh dear. Yes, but first time for the Packers travelling to the UK, so yeah. Let's see if Aaron and the boys can put up some good numbers. And that is all 32 teams would have played in London at that point. Once the pack has come to the UK. So lovely stuff.
Well, there we go. That's that. Send us your picks, people. Get involved. Get stuck in. If you love it like we love it, why don't you love it a bit more? We will be back next week. We might even have a guest if we can, find one lying like down the back of the sofa or in the street or off the list of guests that I've got for this season. One of them will be here, that's for sure. But until then, it's goodbye from myself. It's goodbye from my co-host. It's goodbye to you lovely people. And we shall see you then. Tatty byes.
So there you go, what do you think to that? I don't think we were doing too badly without a guest. Got through it nice and quick. Some might say that's a good thing. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Thanks for being here. Please do consider like, share, subscribe and comment. Drop reviews. Send this to a loved one. And if you're in the market for a website, you can check out thecookiecast.com. There's social media links and an email button, and you can get in touch with us. Drop off those pics you said you were going to do. That's it for this one. Until next time, I'm going to say bye, and I'll see you then.
You've just listened to another episode of Cookie Cast. Thanks for listening.